Hi there, getting a lot of requests from people to do a repair on an LG and a Samsung machine, front load washing machine, show how to do the bearing and seal repair. So I got a machine, it's set up in the shop, and I'm going to show you how to make the repair. Let's go. Okay, here's the machine we're going to work on today. This is a Samsung front load washing machine, and this one is up on a pedestal. And we're going to start by taking a trip around the back side of the machine where I've got the back panel is already taken off, simple 4 screws to pull that cover off. And then there's 2 screws on the back side right here and right here that need to be pulled off, and then this panel lifts up and off, and from there we are going to start disassembling this from the front and pulling off front panels and getting access to that tank. Okay, so we have the top cover off, and we have 4 screws out across the top along here that hold this plastic piece on. We're then just going to pull that plastic piece forward and it unclips, and we're going to disconnect the electrical and get that out of our way, and then we're going to proceed to pulling the front panel off. Once we get the electrical pulled off, we're going to proceed to pulling the front panel off, starting with this row of screws right here, and then we're going to pull the door off, and we're going to take this front panel off, and that's going to give us access to the inside of the assembly. Okay, we got the screws off of the front panel now. We're going to open up this access panel down here, and we're going to go ahead and slide this cover off. You can see it's got some tabs on it. We're going to pull that off so that we don't break it. And there's also a rubber ring that goes around the housing inside of here that has to be pulled off. So we're going to push this tab down in the center here and pull that front housing off. It just tips forward and then lifts straight up. Just inside of that, there's some electrical wires that connect to the door switch here, which are really important to disconnect and then, of course, get them back correctly. What I would recommend doing is, before you disconnect these or this wire assembly at the top, if you're not incredibly familiar with this kind of thing, is just pull out your phone real quick and take a picture of them before you disconnect them, and that'll help confirm that you get everything back exactly the way it's supposed to be. There's a couple of wires down here in the center that you need to disconnect. A couple of red wires, and then it looks like a ground wire to prevent corrosion. So you want to go ahead and disconnect those. Go ahead and disconnect those, and then feed the wire assembly towards the back so it's out of the way. Okay, we're on the back side of the machine now. We're going to pull these wires back that we disconnected from the front, pull those out and get them out of the way. You'll also notice that we've got some wire connections on the back of the machine here that we need to disconnect. Now, when you pull these wire connectors apart, this machine, I've already noticed, it seems like there's a lot of different variations of different types of connectors. Like for example, this one here. It's got these 2 prongs, so it's pretty easy to tell. You push those in and you pull it apart, and it comes apart pretty easily. But like this one here, for example, isn't quite as easy to tell like what you're supposed to do to get it to come off. But what you do with that one is you push the sides and then pull on it, and even when doing that, it's still pretty tough. This one here has got a tab right in front of me, so I'm assuming I push on that tab to pop it off. So each one of those is different. You just got to be careful that you don't break these plastic connectors while you're pulling them off. So I'm just going to pull these wires out the back and kind of set them off to the side here to get them out of the way. And now I'm going to dive underneath here, and I'm going to pull that motor out, or the pump out that you can see laying underneath there. Okay, I just have a couple screws under there to pull that pump out, and there's also a pump diverter down here that I'm also going to pull that out because it's plastic and I don't want it to get it broken. But I just wanted to show you real quick how these clamps work. They're real easy. There's finger clamps. So when it's assembled, they're sitting on the end of the pipe like that. And all you do is pull it back and leave it sitting on the pipe. That way you don't lose it. And then you can work this off. You know, take a screwdriver and break this loose and it'll pull right off of whatever it's on. So those are real easy to get off. So now let's take that pump and that diverter out of there. A little bit too tight to get my cordless in here, so I just pulled this one out by hand. I've already disconnected all the hoses, so it comes out just like that. Okay, next up we're going to take these shock mounts off. You can just take those off of the top. There's a bolt on the top of them as well as the bottom. So you can see the bolt there that holds the top of it on right here. You can take that one off and then the shock will just lay down, or you can take the top and the bottom bolt off, which I'm going to do, and just get the shock out of the way. It also gives you an opportunity to check the condition of that shock and just make sure it's in good shape. I went ahead and broke those loose with a 13mm wrench, and then I'm just going to use a socket on an extension here to pull these out a little more quickly. Now you don't have to worry about the weight of the drum as you're pulling these out, because it's got a couple big springs at the top that are holding it on, so it's just suspended there waiting for us to get all the rest of the stuff out of the way and we can pull it out. Okay, so I'm going to pull the back shocks off same way I did the front. Just one thing I want to show you, these little white tabs right here, you can reach inside and pop those out. Those are designed holes to give you access to the bolts in here. Okay, I'm also going to pull this boot off the bottom of here just to protect the rubber, to make sure I don't damage it when I'm pulling the drum out. There's a screw clamp here that you can loosen. Be able to pull that right off. Okay, so I repositioned the machine a little bit here in my shop underneath one of my garage supports, and I've got a ratchet strap connected to the top of the tank, and I'm going to use that to take a little bit of tension off of the tank and off the springs that are at the top. There's got a nice little hook here in the center of the tank to be able to do that. If you have an extra hand, you don't really need to do that. It's just something that I like to do. It makes it a little bit easier, makes me feel like I'm in a little more control. Because it's in the center, I'm going to pull this support off just because I'm pulling up on this. So I'm going to take these two screws. Once I get the two screws off the front, I'm going to pull this wire harness off here, then lift this up and it'll pop out of the holes it's in the back, and we can set that aside. Okay, now I have direct access here to pull up on this tank. So I'm going to go ahead and take my ratchet strap, pull some tension up on that so I can unhook these. Go ahead and unhook this side as well. Now, one thing I'll say about these springs, I had one of these break on a machine a few years ago, and it was this top corner up here broke, and it broke while the machine was spinning on high, and so the action of the whole tank dropping while it was spinning on high caused the spider to break inside of the drum, and it actually broke the back of the plastic housing, so I had to find new housing for it in order to be able to put it back together. Okay, you can see I placed a little go-kart tire underneath the tank, and I'm going to go ahead and lower the tank onto that so I can have something to sort of set the weight of the bottom of the tank on without damaging the plastic or anything like that. Okay, from there, we're ready to pull it out. You just want to kind of take a look around as you're bringing it out and just make sure that there's nothing hung up on anything. And if you have an extra set of hands, that's helpful too, because these things are pretty heavy. You can also unbolt these counterbalance weights if you want, make it a little easier to move it around, but you don't have to. You can sort of manhandle it. Okay, we got the assembly out, and you can see all these bolts around the center of the assembly. Those are the bolts that we need to take out to part this in half. So once we get those bolts out around there, which I'll show you how to do now, then the tub will come in two, and the steel drum will come out of the center, and the shaft out of the back, and we'll be able to get to the bearings and seal that need to be replaced. Okay, I have the tank flipped over, and this is actually the motor that runs the tank, and there's one screw that I've loosened here, or bolt in the back of it, and this goes right into the drive shaft that connects to the drum. Just work your way around, pulling all these bolts out. This is our 10mm bolts. You can also use a large Phillips, like a number 3. Okay, that's the inside of the tub. This is the drum assembly, which should slide out of here. Sometimes those can be pretty tough to get out of there. This is the drive here where it has the teeth up here. And then the outer bearing rides on this collar right here, which you can see is nice and smooth and not torn up or anything. The inner bearing rides on this final surface right down here, which also looks really pristine. It needs to be cleaned, but it doesn't look terrible. And then the seals on this shoulder down here at the bottom. Okay, so this is the seal right here, and then there's the bearings underneath it, and there's 2 sets of bearings down there. So you can stick a screwdriver or stick something in here and just pop that seal out, just like that. What happens is, we'll go back over to the shaft and I'll show you what happens here. Okay, so I said earlier the inner bearing rides on this surface, the outer bearing rides on this surface, and the seal sits down here. And the seal actually goes on like this, and you see how it fits tight over that shoulder? There's actually even a spring on here to hold these lips tight. And so this sits still while this whole drum assembly is spinning inside of it. And this is all filled with water, and the idea with the seal is that it keeps the water from getting to these 2 bearings. And then the bearings are doing the work of holding the shaft up so that the assembly can spin. So this right here is the culprit of this repair. 99% of the time it's a bad seal, and that ruins the bearings, and so that's why I put together a bearing and seal, or bearings and seal kit to make these repairs. And otherwise, the manufacturer requires you to either buy a whole new machine or buy this whole assembly for, you know, usually $500 or $600. The other thing you have to look for, which, well, this one is a good example of a bad spider, and that's this spider assembly is what connects to the shaft to the drum. And you know, oftentimes you get cracks in these, as this one has. And the reality is, it's pretty amazing how long these can run in pretty poor shape. This one I would not put back together in its. The nice thing about the Samsungs is they're selling this spider separately, so you can order that through Samsung or whatever, but you can get that separately, so you have to buy the whole assembly, and all you do is take 6 screws out, these screws here, and then 2 more on each of these arms. You can pull this spider off, replace it, order the bearing and seal kit from me, and put your machine back together and save yourself probably at least $400, $500, $600, if not more than $1,000 if the idea is that you would have to buy a new machine. So we're going to let this sit, and I'm going to show you how to take the bearings out of this tub assembly. Okay, now to access the outer bearings, we have to get to them, so we got to pull this cap off of the motor here, and it's magnetically held on there, so you got to kind of pull it up, but we can get to that outer bearing now. We'll set this aside. I set the tub on a milk crate or something like this, so I'm going to turn this over, and I'm going to put the open side of the milk crate up like that, and then I'm going to set the assembly on it. And what that does is it gives me something to pound on. It also gives the bearing that I'm going to take out somewhere to fall into and some space to fall. So the next thing you want to do is you want to go down in between you. You're going to leave this bearing for now. We're going to take that out next. If you look down in there, you'll see there's another bearing. And you want to go around tapping on that bearing. You got to hit it pretty hard. And we're going to knock that bearing out. Depending on how corroded these are, sometimes they can be extremely stubborn. That one wasn't actually too bad. So now we're going to flip this over, and we're going to pull this. We're going to pull this bearing out using virtually the same method, but we're going to set this on the ground. When you set it on the ground, you want to make sure that this surface is sitting nice and flat. You can even set it on some pieces of wood or something like that to protect it, just to make sure you don't crack it or damage it or anything like that. And I'm going to beat on this all the way around. And I'm just working that bearing out with each tap. Alright. Okay, now I just want to give you some tips on reassembly. So as you look at reinstalling the bearings, I want to explain how these bearings work so that make sure you do it correctly. So there's an outer race and an inner race to these bearings. You see how the inner race spins? The outer race can stay still while that's spinning. That's the whole point of the bearing, is this inner race rides with the shaft while it's spinning. So all the work happens inside of the bearings where the balls are. So this outer edge doesn't move and the inner edge doesn't move, but the center is where all the spinning action comes from. So this inner race stays stuck to the shaft, this outer race is stuck to the housing, and they operate like that. That being said, it's important that when you set this bearing in place and you go to pound it in, you don't pound on this inner race, because you're essentially transferring the load through the balls into that outer race. And so you want to find something that spans all the way across here. Now this is ideal because it spans all the way across there, and it catches these outer edges of that ring, so that I can use this to tap this in. Now that's one method. You want to be careful with it as you tap it down all the way flush. If you don't have something like this, then you can take something like an extension. It's got a flat surface on both ends, and you can tap this bearing in all the way around like this. The key with it, however you do it, is you want to make sure that you're pounding on this outer race, and you want to pound it all the way in until it's flush. And when it's flush, it will kind of have this dead sound when you hit it, and you know that it's flush. You can also flip the tank over and look to the other side just to make sure it's in all the way. Once this bearing is all the way in, then you can grab the new seal. I don't have a new seal, this is the old one, but I'm going to put a new one in here. Then you can grab the seal, and I like to put a little bit of silicone around the inside of this, and then tap the seal in place and make sure that it sits in there properly. Okay, that's it. Now I showed you all the steps for how to get the machine apart, and all you do to put it back together is reverse all those steps. Take it slow. There's lots of plastic on these machines, so you don't want to break anything. And I showed you how to get the new bearings in place. Make sure you get something that gives them pressure all the way across the bearing. Get those bearings set all the way in. Remember, when you're pounding on them, there's a bit of a dead sound once you get it set all the way in. And then I recommend for all the seals, making sure you set that seal in a little bit of silicone. So just to make double sure that the seal stays where it's supposed to be and that no water gets around the outside or the inside of the seal. Other than that, you know how to do the repair now. Just reverse all the steps that I showed you and it should go pretty smooth. Remember, we have a chat forum for you to be able to talk with me and other people who've made this repair. And of course, you can get your repair kit on the links below in the description of the video.